Get ready to be amazed by 50 incredible facts about American history. From how the internet started to who the US bought Alaska from, we're looking at events that made a big impact. Let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and let's jump right in. 1. Back in 1972, the US Mint introduced the very first official American dollar, which was silver-backed. This marked the beginning of a new era in American currency. However, this system lasted until the US transitioned to the gold standard later in the 1800s. 2. In 1773, angry over British taxes, American colonists dumped 342 chests of tea into Boston Harbor. This bold act, known as the Boston Tea Party, was more than a protest. It fueled the fight for independence and brought the colonies closer to revolution. 3. We celebrate July 4th, 1776, as the signing of the Declaration of Independence. But here's a twist. It wasn't fully signed until 1781. Some of the final signatures came years after the initial drafting. Independence didn't happen overnight. It took time, effort, and a whole lot of persistence. 4. Ever wonder why the American flag has 13 stripes? Each one represents an original colony that fought for independence. At first, they planned to add a stripe for every new state, but that got out of hand fast. Now, we add stars for each state, honoring the original 13. 5. The U.S. Constitution was officially approved in 1787, but the Bill of Rights wasn't added until 1791. These first 10 amendments guaranteed freedoms like speech, religion, and the right to a fair trial. They still protect individual rights and limit government power today. 6. George Washington was the only president not to join a political party. He feared political parties would divide the nation. Despite his warnings, parties quickly formed, and they've been a part of American politics ever since. Well, we know how that worked out. 7. Did you know Washington, D.C. wasn't always the capital of the United States? Before 1790, the capital was Philadelphia. The move was part of a plan to create a capital more centrally located between the northern and southern states. Building D.C. was a huge undertaking, taking several years to complete. 8. In 1791, the U.S. government imposed a tax on distilled spirits known as the Whiskey Tax. This led to the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794. Farmers in Pennsylvania, hit hard by the tax, rose up in protest, and it became one of the first major challenges to the authority of the new government. 9. A president and vice president from different political parties once led the country. In 1797, John Adams, a Federalist, became president, while his rival Thomas Jefferson, a Democratic Republican, became vice president. This unusual pairing led to a rule change, as having leaders from different political parties in office created some tension. 10. John Adams and Thomas Jefferson, both former U.S. presidents, passed away on July 4, 1826, exactly 50 years after signing the Declaration of Independence. Talk about dramatic timing. 11. In the 1830s, thousands of Native Americans were forced to move to Oklahoma in the Trail of Tears. The Indian Removal Act caused the deaths of thousands during the journey, devastating Native communities and taking their land. 12. In 1836, Texas won the Texas Revolution and broke away from Mexico. For almost 10 years, Texas had its own government, money, and military before becoming part of the U.S. in 1845. 13. The Liberty Bell has not rung since 1846 on George Washington's birthday. There was a crack, and after every strike, the crack got worse. So officials decided to stop using it to avoid further damage. Since then, it's remained silent, standing as a lasting symbol of American independence. 14. In 1849, thousands of fortune seekers, known as 49ers, rushed to California, dreaming of gold and riches. The gold rush transformed California's economy and population, making it the most populous state by the end of the 19th century. 15. Harriet Tubman was a true hero. Born into slavery, she risked her life time and time again to guide others to freedom through the Underground Railroad. She didn't just escape herself. She made 13 dangerous missions and helped 70 people find freedom. That's bravery. 16. A dispute over the San Juan Islands nearly led to war with Britain in 1859 because of a pig. A British pig wandered onto an American farm and was shot, sparking a military standoff before diplomacy settled the issue. 17. The American Civil War, fought between 1861 and 1865, claimed over 600,000 lives, making it the deadliest war in U.S. history. The effects were felt for generations to come, especially with the abolition of slavery. 18. In 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation, freeing enslaved people in the southern states. This moment marked a turning point in the fight for equality, but it was just the beginning of a much longer struggle. 19. The Battle of Gettysburg in 1863 was a turning point in the Civil War. After 3 days of fighting, Union forces led by General Meade stopped Robert E. Lee's invasion of the North. This victory gave the Union the upper hand, leading to the Confederacy's surrender 2 years later. 20. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln declared Thanksgiving a national holiday, setting the date for the last Thursday in November. This helped bring some unity during the Civil War. 21. In 1866, America offered Britain $1.5 million to purchase Canada. The reason? To prevent Canada from becoming a European colony. But despite the ambitious offer, the proposal was rejected, and history took a different turn. 22. The U.S. purchased Alaska from Russia in 1867 for just $7.2 million, about 2 cents per acre. At the time, people called it Seward's folly because they thought it was a bad deal, but today, Alaska is an economic powerhouse. 23. Yellowstone became America's first national park in 1872. It set the stage for the national park system, preserving stunning landscapes and geothermal features for everyone to enjoy. 24. In 1879, Thomas Edison invented the practical incandescent light bulb. Before then, people had been trying to create electric lighting, but his version was the first that worked well and could be sold to the public. 25. Besides the light bulb, Thomas Edison invented the phonograph, motion pictures, and improved telegraphy. He didn't just change the world, he helped invent it. 26. In 1893, American businessmen overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy, and by 1898, Hawaii was annexed by the U.S. Despite opposition from native Hawaiians, the move expanded U.S. territory and allowed for a stronger military presence in the Pacific. 27. In 1898, the Spanish-American War ended with a big win for the U.S. The Treaty of Paris forced Spain to give up the Philippines, Puerto Rico, and Guam, marking the U.S. as a rising global power. The war also ended Spain's colonial rule in the Americas, changing the world's political landscape. 28. In 1901, 63-year-old schoolteacher Annie Edson Taylor became the first person to survive going over Niagara Falls in a barrel. She did it to gain fame and fortune, but it was definitely a daring and risky feat. 29. On December 17, 1903, the Wright brothers achieved the first successful powered flight in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. The flight lasted just 12 seconds, but it was the start of major advancements in aviation. This achievement marked the beginning of human flight and eventually led to the space age. 30. The U.S. stayed neutral in World War I until 1917, when President Wilson led the country into the war. German attacks on American ships and the Zimmermann telegram pushed the U.S. to join, ending isolationism and helping the Allies win. 31. The 1920s were full of jazz, flappers, and economic growth, but everything changed in 1929. The stock market crash started the Great Depression, causing high unemployment and hardship for many families. President Roosevelt's New Deal programs eventually helped the economy recover and lifted the country out of the Depression. 32. Believe it or not, Prohibition helped create NASCAR. During the 1920s, bootleggers modified their cars to outrun the police while smuggling alcohol. These souped-up cars and skilled drivers eventually turned into America's most famous stock car racing league. 33. Hattie Caraway made history in 1932 as the first woman elected to the U.S. Senate. She was a trailblazer for women in politics and proved that women could hold power at the highest levels. 34. In 1935, President Franklin D. Roosevelt created Social Security as part of the New Deal. This program helped retirees, the disabled, and the unemployed, and it's still a big part of the U.S. government today. 35. Franklin D. Roosevelt was also the first U.S. president to appear on TV. He was broadcast live in 1939 during the opening of the New York World's Fair, showing off the power of this new technology. 36. In 1814, after seeing the American flag fly following a British attack on Fort McHenry, Francis Scott Key wrote a poem called The Star-Spangled Banner. The poem became the national anthem in 1931, symbolizing American strength and unity. 37. During World War II, the Tuskegee Airmen became the first African-American military pilots, trained at Tuskegee Army Airfield. Despite facing discrimination, they proved their skill in combat, breaking racial barriers and helping lead to the desegregation of the military. 38. After World War II, Europe was in ruins. The U.S. responded with the Marshall Plan, giving over $12 billion to help rebuild European economies. This effort helped restore industries, stabilize governments, and showed America's leadership, while also stopping the spread of communism. 39. U.S. troops have landed on every continent, even Antarctica. In 1946, Operation High Jump sent thousands of military personnel to the icy continent for research and exploration. 40. In the 1950s, the FBI investigated Elvis Presley, worried that his music and dance moves were corrupting American youth. Some even thought he was a threat to the country's morals, but in the end, nothing came of it. 41. In 1958, the U.S. launched its first satellite, Explorer 1, marking its entry into the space race. This followed the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik and showed America's commitment to space exploration. 42. The Internet began in the 1960s as a military project called ARPANET. Created by the U.S. Department of Defense, its goal was to help researchers and military teams share information quickly and securely. Over time, ARPANET grew and eventually became the Internet we use today. 43. In the 1960s, the CIA tried a strange project called Project Acoustic Kitty, where they attempted to use cats as spies by implanting listening devices. The plan was a failure and quickly abandoned. Turns out, cats aren't cut out for espionage. 44. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 was the closest the Cold War came to a nuclear disaster. For 13 tense days, the US and the Soviet Union stood on the edge, until a last-minute deal avoided global catastrophe. 45. The civil rights movement of the 1960s, led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., fought for racial equality. His "I Have a Dream" speech, which he gave during the March on Washington in 1963, still resonates today as a call for justice and peace. 46. In 1967, the first Super Bowl was played between the Green Bay Packers and the Kansas City Chiefs. But guess what? It wasn't even called the Super Bowl yet. The Packers won 35-10, and the game didn't get its famous name until a few years later. 47. On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first person to walk on the moon. This moment was a huge achievement in the space race and showed what humans can accomplish. His words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," highlighted how important this mission was. 48. In 1974, President Richard Nixon resigned after the Watergate scandal, the first and only president to do so. The whole ordeal was messy, involving break-ins and cover-ups. Nothing screams trust issues like having a president who had to bow out over a scandal. 49. Sandra Day O'Connor became the first woman appointed to the Supreme Court in 1981. Chosen by President Ronald Reagan, she played a key role in decisions on issues like abortion and affirmative action, opening doors for more women in law. 50. On January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger exploded just 73 seconds after takeoff, killing all 7 crew members, including teacher Krista McAuliffe. The cause was a faulty O-ring, and the tragedy led to major safety changes at NASA. And there you have it, 50 mind-blowing facts about U.S. history that might just change the way you think about this country. Which fact blew your mind the most? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this, hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this. Thanks for watching.